Greetings, brothers and sisters. Greetings. Assalamu alaikum. It gives me great pleasure to be here with you. In the name of the beneficent, the beautiful, master of Ridi, of requital, the beautiful, the magnificent, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, who've given us a message of peace, given us the teachings of peace, the message of justice, and have given us equality, and have given us as a way Islam. We serve the God who gave us the prophet, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, who gave us Jesus, who gave us Moses, who gave us Dr. King, who gave us Minister Malcolm X, who gave us every leader that has ever come before us. This is a very, very interesting subject we're going to talk about today. And for that reason, I'm just so excited. I'm talking so fast, I'm stuttering all over myself. But this is a very interesting subject that we're about to discuss is very, very interesting. And we know it because it asks us to, in so many instances, go back and take a type of general and panoramic view in the whole of human history as far as the civil rights movement is concerned. And we say the civil rights movement, we mean just that. And how much we, excuse me, brothers and sisters, I'm sure you understand, how much we lost in the civil rights movement, the gains and the loss. Now, first thing I want to say is that the civil rights movement was not controlled by the black majority. The fear was controlled by the black majority, but not the movement itself. And that's very important. The fear was controlled in the sense that black people had become one voice, and so they were ready to do something about the issue that was facing the entire black community, both nationally, locally, and internationally. So the force of fear that the white man had was controlled by the black mass, the majority. But the movement itself wasn't controlled by the black mass. And even in the appealing of the movement and the organizing of it, in which was sporadic. It was sporadic because it just came up all over the nation, so it was very sporadic. So the momentum of the movement was from dissatisfied blacks, dissatisfied minorities, dissatisfied business people within the black community, right? In the sense that their businesses were being attacked, burned, bombed, the same way that you have to understand exactly what's going on. The same way that Tulsa, Oklahoma was destroyed. Why? Because the labor was controlled and is controlled by a black majority. You have to understand it. You have to know it. That the labor is controlled by a black majority. Now, if the labor is controlled by a black majority, then what place is there for a white, quote unquote, minority as it relates to employment? We have to ask ourselves, this is where we are. These are the questions, or these are the situations that led to the civil rights movement. When Emmett Till was killed, it was a matter of frustration, both economically and sexually. And we have to discuss the white woman in this sense too, because if you go back to the suffrage movement, excuse me, brothers and sisters, if you go back to the suffrage movement of the 20s, you'll begin to find out that there's a massive split between the white majority as it relates to the female versus the male. And when World War I and World War II was started, they had to hire the white female. They had to hire her to go into the industry where the husband used to work and fulfill that job. So she had to learn. The production was kept at a great rate too. So they kept the production at a great rate, and the white woman had to learn those vocations, which put her in a different frame of mind. And all of this works together because all of this is the recipe for a revolution. So when you talk about the civil rights movement, it's a revolution, a political revolution, and wholly misguided on purpose by the U.S. government, who knew what it could be. Who knew what it could be. And that's the danger. See, when you say revolution, then that is a dissatisfaction with the regime that is running the locomotions or engines of power. That's what you mean. So revolutions take over power, and the no one is more familiar with the revolution or the movement of change than the American government or the Europeans. No one is more familiar with that than them, because they've turned on each other and taken each other's power and went to war, killing one another. Germany was just the last of those wars. Now they've retransmitted these wars into Iran and Iraq, which is still, they're genetically involved because they're genetically attached. It's still their bloodline. And you look at Russia, they're constantly going into war. Because it's always the conquest of power. And that's very, very, very important. Now, in saying that, because we need to get over to our subject this evening. In saying that, understand that to the white regime, just as we discussed yesterday, we'll talk about it today. The white regime still has attachments in the power structure, right? So the owners in the market, if they're not independent owners, then they are bourgeois owners or in bourgeoisie, attached to the wealth of American democracy. So we have to understand that. Now, with that being said, there are certain people in place whose education benefit the white market, whose vocation benefit the white market, whose religion benefit the white market. And then attached to them are well-wishers, right? And those that are desirous. They have a lean and hungry look. They're desirous to become a part of the black establishment that is attached to the white establishment. So we have to put these things in perspective, because this brings into view who is a Rosa Parks, who is a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who is a Philip Randolph. This brings it in there. Who is a Adam Clayton Powell, right? This brings in who's a Thurgood Marshall. So we have to have some understanding. We have to have some understanding as it relates. See? Because some people are in a position because they knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody, or that their parents is attached or work for the GM owner of the GM Motor Company, or the senator of the Republican Party, the majority leader. So this is very important. Now, when we get to Rosa Parks, we're gonna jump on in this, because we got to, and it's some things I'm gonna have to say. Excuse me, brothers and sisters. Thank you very much. I'm sure you understand. I'm so thankful that you always do. We've got, this is a real podcast. No commercial breaks just to blow our nose. We have to understand that we have got systems set in place. I believe Brother Coakley, Steve Coakley, called them Sigma systems. We have Sigma systems set in place where fraternities, where families, where bloodlines, where work relation, vocational relation, educational relation, and relationship, financial, social, religious, and otherwise, that are machines, big cogs and little cogs, turning this engine of global Western power structure. You have to understand that. Now, first of all, let's dispel the myth. Rosa Parks was not the first one to get arrested for not giving up her seat. There was somebody before her named Claudette Colvin. But Claudette Colvin was not the first one. There's another lady that did it in Atlanta, and there are so many that defied the bus regulations, unjust bus regulations. But the very first one to openly defy the bus regulation and openly protest and legally challenge the bus and unjust rules of the bus was a lady named Sarah Mae Fleming out of Columbia, South Carolina. This is the first person that challenges the system of segregation as it relates to the buses. I'm going to put her name in. First, I'm going to type this in because this is very important. First, bus, we'll call it boycott and legal pursuit against the bus, because that's very, very important. We'll call it the DOT. We'll call it the DOT, Department of Transportation, right? So this is very important. This is a big day because she died without even getting a chance to see this. But the first person to defy the bus's rules was a lady named Sarah Fleming. So we're going to put that in there. Sarah Mae Fleming. This is very, very important. And Sister Fleming's, who she passed at 60 years of age, she hardly ever gets the recognition for that. This whole thing with Rosa Parks was a political ploy. And whites directed it, and they had her attached to the NAACP. Now they used the excuse that Claudette Colvin was pregnant, and Mrs. Parks said that she didn't want that exposed because she didn't want them to rip her to shreds. And they probably would have. So they sent her to Detroit. But they could have made the case, sent her to Detroit, wait till she had the baby and then come back. Have somebody keep the baby. This is very simple. So they were clout chasing. The real thing is that they were clout chasing. This had nothing to do with Dr. King. Dr. King didn't know anything about it. Edie Nixon of the NAACP and Rosa Parks organized this because they felt there's something they could use and work. They had tried things before to get a case to bring it before the government. They couldn't use Plessy versus Ferguson. That had already been debated, was being redebated, which was the train, right? The train. So that's what Plessy versus Ferguson was Plessy was on a train, and he was they say he was a free slave, but when he got in the South, they say he was riding in the wrong section. So he took it to the Supreme Court. Now they couldn't use Brown versus the Board of Education because that was being used to justify Department of Transportation fairness to blacks and busing them where they needed to go. So they had to find an incident on the buses that would justify a national movement. And initially, they weren't fighting against segregation. They were only fighting to maybe experience a more gentle form of segregation, if you will. This forced integration was pushed on black folks. Forced integration was pushed on black folks by the government. It wasn't by moral conscience of Dr. King. It had nothing to do with it. The government forced integration. They forced integration. Because their economy was suffering. Everything had to do with their economy. Everything had to do with their economy. It was their economy. It was their economy. It was their economy. It was their economy. The white economy was suffering. And they needed the money that blacks were using for their economy. Right? Our money was going to our own stock market in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Is that right? Even after the bombing. Tulsa is still alive. It's still moving. It still moves today. So we don't say what we had, what we have. We still have Tulsa, Oklahoma. We still have a lot of money. We still have a lot of power. But the white man was losing money and losing power. Same way today. He know that he can't get you to play ball. So now he's put the immigrants in. Right? And civil rights has become a farce. It's become a farce. Now, back to Rosa Parks. She was not the first one to do this. Before her was Claudette Colvin. She wasn't the first either. Sarah Mae Fleming was the first. She was the first to challenge the bus system. She was the first to take it to the Supreme Court. She was the first to defy the de facto policies and regulations of the bus system. The only reason that Sarah Mae Fleming, the only reason that you don't hear anything about her is that there was no strong organization behind her to bring this up before the people. And then the NAACP leaders may have been turned off by the area that was run by Mauricelm-Lei Simpkins. That's another thing we need to look up. Mauricelm-Lei Simpkins helped organize the NAACP. She also is from South Carolina. She as well is from South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. So black folks were blackballing each other because she said that the NAACP had lost its vigor, and after they lost Thurgood Marshall, they really didn't have any, couldn't get any respect from Mauricelm-Lei Simpkins. She was one of the architects of the NAACP, and because she disagreed with them, they put her out. But Montgomery, Alabama, with the massive amount of blacks they have, their ties to Atlanta, Georgia, and because Dr. King was there and very popular and gaining momentum as a young leader, they said, finally, we have a chance to galvanize the people and really cause some real ruckus on this issue of transportation, because we're tired of riding in the back of the bus. And we're tired of having to give up our seat to these white people. But it didn't happen with Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was staged. That was staged. You'll find that there was so many that was involved in this this whole defy the bus. That's what I call it, defying the bus regulation. There were so many that was involved in that. Rosa Parks saw an idea that could be used. She saw an idea that could be used. And let's be real, it was a clout chase. Instead of giving the credit to the person that actually did it, even if she didn't know Sarah Mae Fleming, which it's impossible for them not to know, because these things hit the airwaves legally. They began to challenge it legally. But if we can do this in Montgomery, Alabama, We have Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He's standing up. He's not afraid to stand up and speak his mind. And he believes in the power of God. He believes in the movement of the black people as it relates to the church. So we could use him. We could have an advantage. So, and not to mention, if I do this, then I can have my name in the paper. I want you to understand how DC was controlling this. And I'm saying Washington, DC was controlling this. The Eisenhower administration. I want you to understand how military this was carried out. Because the minute that Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, they take her in. I understand. This is around the time when they're still killing and beating black men and women. Come on now. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. Okay? This is a time when they're still beating black men and black women. They carefully take Rosa Parks in. Right? They when they take her in, they get a fingerprint, they arrest her. But they carefully take her in, carefully arrest her, and carefully release her, and the bail is made by E.D. Nixon, who was over the NAACP in that area. Now, the NAACP targeted Dr. King because he had no fear, plus he was young. They took advantage of him. He was very young. But he was committed to what he was doing. And they said, listen, we're going to put this in the lap of Dr. King. We're going to make him the president of the NAACP. We're going to push him to be the president, and then we're going to make him political spokesman. So they had an agenda. They had an agenda. Before Dr. King even came to Montgomery, Alabama, before they knew anything about a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I want you to understand that there were certain people running Montgomery, Alabama that wanted to keep things in place. Rosa Parks was one of these people. E.D. Nixon was one of these people. And the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church also had administrative leaders that were black, that were part of the white power structure to keep Montgomery, Alabama in line. This backfired when they thought that they had a puppet. They thought King would be a puppet, but he was no puppet. He was very convinced. He was very convicted. And they never anticipated that things would turn out the way it did because they thought they could control it. All right? There's a lot you got to know about Miss Rosa Parks. Right? So much to know about her. And we're gonna get on that because I want you to understand who Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks is. I want you to understand who this is. Now, she's associated with the NAACP and is very, very instrumental in the NAACP and very active in the community for her membership drive. So we don't take anything from her. She became, and you have to understand this. I want you to understand how all of this works together. Brother and sister, once you open your eyes and your ears, I respect Miss Rosa Parks because somebody had to do it. Somebody had to organize, so I certainly respect her. This is not disrespectful, but what I'm telling you is that anytime you see people constantly put before you that are black and you know that you're dealing with a racist power structure in America and they're not, and they're speaking good about these people, that means they have some kind of control. Now, I don't want to deviate, but let's talk about Nellie. Nellie performed Trump's inauguration, right? Trump has a bit of control of Nellie's celebrity, money-wise, and all that, because he's one of the people that have a massive control of the money and the massive control of music status, massive control of business status as it relates to America. He has a lot of power. All of this court stuff and shenanigans and what they're going to do against Trump and you vote him back in office, Come on, brothers and sisters. Open your eyes. Hear with your ears. Smell with your own nostrils. Huh? You gotta be able to determine what's happening, when it's happening, why it's happening, where it's happening, huh? And what for. You got to be able to do that. And I'm challenging you to use, because you're mature now. See, when you were younger, you got fed with a bottle or your mom's packs, right? When you got older, you could stand a little eggs and a little bread and those eggs mixed together and give it to you. By the time you're 2 years old, you're able to eat honey and make you a peanut butter sandwich and still eat some over easy eggs or scramble or what have you, right? Because the older you get from birth, the more your body can handle because the digestion is stronger. Now, let's say that spiritually, you were young in the past. Spiritually, you were young. I'm talking about as a black nation. But when you begin to grow up, you can handle more. You can eat stronger foods. You'll get stronger. You can move faster. Is that right or wrong? And if you continue to exercise, you'll continue to be this way throughout your life, even into old age. If you continue to exercise, continue to eat the right foods, continue to govern your mind, right? You'll lead a righteous, ripened, well-to-do older life. You won't be dying with any illness or sickness and things of that nature. I said that for a reason. You have to tune this mind. It has to be exercised. You got to exercise your thoughts. You got to challenge your own thoughts. You got to try it, right? By fire, right? Because the mind is a laboratory for the senses. This is what increase your senses, increase your instincts, right? It stop you from listening to BS, huh? And to find the truth amid the mess. So I'm having a fireside chat with you right now. Parks became the NAACP activist in 1943. It's important to remember. It was a lot to remember. She participated in several high-profile civil rights campaigns. And on December the 1st, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, Parks rejected, the bus driver's name was James F. Blake. She rejected the bus driver, James F. Blake's orders to vacate a row of 4 seats in the color section. So that means she was already sitting in the right section, but she had to give her seat to whites. So they had de facto laws, double-edged rules that all worked in the favor of the whites, right? So they said, give up this seat to this white female passenger. Now, you know the story. And who complained to the driver, I need a seat. Rosa Parks said, I'm not giving up my seat. I'm not giving up my seat. They said that Parks was the first to resist. Right? That's the story. That Parks was the first person to resist bus segregation. That isn't true. That isn't true. But they believed that she was the best candidate. Why? She held a position in NAACP and she was highly respected by the community. But they know that she was not the first person to resist the bus segregation. Because I believe that Juan Gonzalez, and there are other books that are written too, but I believe that Juan Gonzalez in March 29th, 2013, I believe, who's a minor historian, he calls his book The Other Rosa Parks. He talked about Claudette Colvin, who is about 73 years of age. She's still alive. He said that she was the first person to refuse to give up her seat on the Montgomery bus, but that's still to keep it over in Alabama. And Rosa Parks was the one that protected Colvin and bailed her out. Now, but that's not true. Democracy now already knows, and others already know, but they control the information that Sarah Mae Fleming out of Columbia, South Carolina, was the very first person to defy bus segregation, to try it legally. And she didn't get anything from it, no recognition, no nothing. They barely talked about it. Barely talked about it. The idea was to keep it in the area of the Montgomery NAACP, Montgomery, Alabama NAACP. And that Claudette Colvin was also a youth in the Montgomery, Alabama NAACP. She was a youth, but they didn't know. They had her to do it. They didn't know that she was pregnant at the time. So it was a clout chase. So then they had Sister Parks to do it. I'm gonna call it. Can I say that, brothers and sisters? They had Sister Parks to do it, right? They're not letting you know that all this is calculated. All of this is calculated. Claudette Colvin had gotten pregnant by a young man, and she ended up going to Detroit. Now, Rosa Parks sent her to Detroit, right? Rosa Parks sent her to Detroit. But guess what? Rosa Parks sent her to Detroit, and she eventually went to Detroit too because it meant that she couldn't get a job. She was looked at as a troublemaker and things of that nature. So Colvin was arrested. Her case led to the U.S. Supreme Court order for desegregation to Alabama bus system. Colvin is about 73 years old now. And I believe the Brooklyn College professor's name was Gene Phil Harris, the author of The Rebellious Life of Miss Rosa Parks. Phil Harris says that Parks' act of defiance may not have happened if not for Colvin's 9 months before. In other words, she was pregnant. Colvin learning about the African American history in school inspired her to act. So in most of your movement, all the movement normally take place with a younger crowd. It's never failed. It's never failed. The movement normally take place with a younger crowd. The reason is that the older you get, the more disillusioned you get. Right? The older you get, the more disillusioned you get. When you're younger, you take a chance. Your convictions appear. Same with Dr. King. He was 23 when he came to Montgomery, Alabama. The NAACP already had this thing going on. They were building membership. A massive part of the membership came from the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church and the 16th Avenue Baptist Church. Right? And when these situations began to happen, then it would fill more membership. They could raise money, is that right? And become a solid organization. So they used the young people, found the ideas, and then jumped aboard. Same way they did SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. SNCC would take chances that the older civil rights leaders didn't want to take. So the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee started the Freedom Rides. If you don't know anything about the Freedom Rides, that'd be a good thing for you to look up. The Freedom Rides. Very, very good thing for you to look up. Now, they shoot this picture with a young, handsome Dr. King, young minister, outstanding, well-dressed, well-spoken. They take a picture of Rosa Parks and they position her in front of Dr. King. And this media shot is what it flashes across. And he has no idea. Dr. King was not cloud chasing or anything like that. He's ready to get on with his life. But it puts him, it perpetuates him. So it sort of set him up. And he even says it. He said that he was really caught in the middle. They invited him to a meeting, right? After they get this picture of Rosa Parks and this newspaper, media, and radio and television is coming out too. And Dr. King is in the right position at the right time. Just like Barack Obama, the internet took off for him. Even the phones, right? BlackBerry and the Droid phone took off for Barack Obama. He was young when he became president. But Dr. King, as a national leader, 23 years of age, the media is all on him. He has these convictions. Rosa Parks get in the picture with him. Then they say, hey, we're going to invite Dr. King to this meeting, and we're going to let him do a keynote address. He don't know it yet. And we're going to ask him to serve as our spokesman. It was the beginning of a dream and a nightmare for him. So they pretty much, tossed Dr. King in the front of something at the age he was, that he didn't really know really what he was getting into until he began to fight a little while. And he saw the honeymoon is over. The haze leave that will get me killed. I'm into something now that I can't. He said, history has thrust something upon me that I can't cut loose, right? So we have to understand what's going on. I'm not ripping Miss Rosa Parks down. I certainly wouldn't do that. Certainly wouldn't do that. Peace and blessings, Reggie T. Peace and blessings, brother. Peace and blessings. Good to see you. I'm not ripping her down. I'm not being negative or anything like that, but I want to let you know that we have to continue the fight. The integration movement was never meant to give us freedom, justice, and equality. It was never meant for that. It wasn't the purpose of it. The purpose of it was to get in control of Black people who had begun to rise, who have begun to get dissatisfied. Same with the integration movement today. What is the purpose of that? The purpose of the integration and immigration, because we have to count both of them in the same thing. They're integrating the Mexican population, the brown people, into America, and they're immigrating, right, every day. America. Every day. So they got the integration where they're working them in to the population, and they're immigrating, which is bringing them over every day and letting them have babies here. The baby becomes citizen, and it's the age-old trick. Age-old trick. And the brown man don't care about anybody. They would turn against themselves, their mom. A lot of them were killers. I hate to say it. I really hate to say this. I hate to say this. Now, you got some revolutionaries, but they'll normally align themselves with other Blacks that are trying to do something meaningful. You got some Fidel Castros out there. You got some Che Guevaras out there that will stand and believe in revolutionizing the areas that they're in. You got those out there. But when they come in here, talking about they're coming to find a better life, what they mean is, we coming to get with the white man, and we already know the drill. We're going to dress in these uniforms and whatnot to be some Black people if we have to. Get on the police force. They're the main ones that kill us. Brown people now on the police force, working in the prisons, working in other jobs. Look at Trayvon Martin's killer. Huh? Look at Trayvon Martin's killer. What color was he? He was a brown man attached to a white family. Right? His daddy was a retired old white judge and policy maker. Right? I'm just trying to tell you what's going on, brothers and sisters. We got to open up our minds and our ears. And when there are other people that they put in front of us, and you see all of these numbers, they're not talking about anything. They'll never talk about anything. Not anything that makes sense. They'll never talk about anything that makes sense. But they come before you and I. They come before you and I with a bunch of rhetoric and a bunch of juicy stuff. It's not going to help anybody. They're just talking. They're not talking to organize. But I tell you, when we come on this show, we come on this show to organize. Why? I tell you, don't leave yourself in the open and march out there. You're acting a fool. Go to your community. Reach somebody that has a need. It only has to be one person. One person. But reach somebody who has a need. Excuse me, brothers and sisters. Somebody who has a need. For instance, we don't have to have the federal government to organize a building for those in poverty who are homeless. We need to have our own homeless shelters. We need to be able to feed and clothe our people, be able to train them so they can have vocations and all of that. It wouldn't take much to do that if the churches would get on board. But if the churches don't get on board, then the black community get on board. If the churches don't get on board, the black community need to get on board. See? Bless you, brother. Bless you, brother Reggie T. Bless you. So we got to get on board and do what is necessary to save and help our community. We've got to. We got to. If we don't do it, nobody's going to do it. Where do we go from here? We'll talk about the problem and situation. We know the government is controlling everything. Is that right or wrong? We know it. The government is controlling every movement that comes about. Look at the Proud Boys, government control. NFAC, government control. We know that the government is. The Hewitt Newton Gun Club. They got the white man out there with them as they shooting targets. Misguided, brothers and sisters. We need God, and then we also need unity in the black community to do the will of God. We've got to do the will of God. See? The program for the Black Panther Party came from the Muslim movement. Program for the Civil Rights Association came from the Christian church. You got to have God, and you got to be led by God in order to do the basic thing. Food, clothes, shelter, right? And then vocation. We have to teach them food, clothes, shelter, administration, education, right? And that's FACES. And we use this. First thing we need to do, because like, for example, it's cold. There's a Polar Express coming through the south. There's ice going up in the north, east and west. We're feeling it. There are people out on the streets tonight that will die because black communities don't have their own shelters. This is true. This is true. There are people who will die tonight from starvation because you don't have shelter, you don't have any food to serve in those shelters. That's true. There are people who will die tonight because they don't have a place to sleep. We've got to be responsible. My desire and my prayer is to lead that kind of movement in this day. The other movements is dead. There's no sense in you marching and you got armed gear while you're out of your mind. And you see anybody black marching with a weapon and he got a cadre of men and white police are helping him, you already know what he is. You ain't even got to wonder. But we've got to remove the copyons. I'm not calling Miss Rosa Parks a copyon. All I am saying is that we need to know the truth. We need to know the truth. Did it help us? In many ways, it did. In many ways, the civil rights movement helped us. I will never say that it didn't help us. In many ways, it helped us because now we know, after the dispensation of nonviolence, we know that the white man is killing us and black people have gotten armed. You don't have to tell a man to not get armed to defend himself. He's already getting armed. But I said that to say this. Our first priority should be building up the black community. Stay out of the white community and build up your community. It should be your first purpose. Excuse me, brothers and sisters. I know you understand. Build up your community. Come out of the white community. Stop dating the white girls. Stop dating the white boys. Our black women and our black men could use you to help produce and bring in more black brothers and sisters in the world. Get out of the white man's bedroom. Get out of his kitchen. Get out of his living room. Come out of there. I'm not speaking racism. He don't want you in there anyway. He don't even want you in there. You ain't got enough sense to even know it. It's a shame. It's a shame. Start supporting your brothers and sisters and the things that they have in the community so that you'll be able to help deliver your community from what's coming. If you're not organized and you're depending on the one that put you in the situation in the first place, then you're admitting to the world and yourself that you're insane. Completely out of your mind. Completely out of your mind. But we need to be within the black community to build it up ourselves. Now, did the civil rights community help us? Yes, it helped us in the sense that we know that they've never been seriously or legitimately serious about us getting ahead. So now we don't waste our time. Other than that, physically, it never helped us. It never helped us. But we don't waste our time there anymore. We know it's not going to work. So now we do better. We rebuild in our own community. We go in areas that we can rebuild amongst one another and build up something for ourselves. The best protest you can do is the dollar. The best protest you can do. Stop supporting the system that is keeping you down, that's oppressing you. There's no better protest. No better protest than you to build up your community. No better protest. And you build up the things that you need in your community, start building them up in your community. Build up the restaurants, build up the cell phone stores, get car dealers, used car dealers. Create jobs in your community, carpentry, electrician, and all of that. We can't go back. We can't go back. No going back. We must go forward. We must go forward. So, but before we can do that, we've got to wash our history from the lies and manipulations, because that will hurt us in the long run, and it destroys people. It destroys people. Who was the first to boycott the bus system? We already know who it was. Sarah Mae Fleming. Sarah Mae Fleming was the first. Prior to her, the train was desegregated, and that was done by Ferguson. Plessy versus Ferguson. So we have to understand, and this truth, we're gonna talk about Sarah Mae Fleming too. This truth that we have, right, will help deliver oncoming generations from the lies and stigma of progress, right? Just like the Democratic Party. There are black people that really believe that they are part of the Democratic Party. I know, I'm bringing it up. There are black people that really believe that they're part of the Democratic Party. Really believe that. Really believe it. You're not a part of the Democratic Party. You may be a servant in a Democratic Party, but you're not a leader in a Democratic Party. That's a farce. They're not the first blacks that have held office in a Democratic Party. Well, they had I don't know what to call them, seat warmers in the reconstruction of the Old South. They had seat warmers then. They came out of Master's house So it's the same game. They came out of slavery, and 2 years later, black man is in as a senator or representative. Now, what would he know or she know other than what the white man tells them to do in order that they would protect the plantations and the reservations and create what is it? The laws. 40 acres and a mule that black folks still didn't get, right? It was a sharecropping law, which enabled them to enslave you again if you had debt. Now here you are working for them again, and you can't leave the land, right? Did the same thing to the Native American. They did the very same thing to the indigenous man of America. They did the very same thing. The black man and the red man, you can't separate them. They're one and the same. One and the same. Now, Sarah Mae Fleming Brown was her name. Sarah Mae Fleming Brown. Sarah Mae Fleming Brown. This is who we're discussing. I like to put this in here because we need to know. We need to know. We need to know. Knowledge is power, brothers and sisters. And you hear me telling you now. You hear me telling you. I want to hear you say nothing to me. Nothing to me. And you said we're making progress. They got this black man over here, this white, rather black woman over here, and they're doing great. Well, we got blacks in the electoral college, they're doing great. Listen, if black folks are there in those positions, it's because whites put them there. You have more power on the ground. You got more power on the ground than you do in legislature. The only way that you'll have power as a legislator or councilman or mayor or senator or representative, the only way that you'll have power is that you represent, as black people, you're representing an entire black district. And if you represent an entire black district, you'll get something done on a local level. You don't need Washington, D.C. You don't need the House of Representatives or the House of Senate. You don't need the governor for that. You can do that as a mayor and less, or as a regular social worker. And I'm not talking about one with a degree. A regular civil rights person, activist, human rights activist. You can organize people together, raise pennies, pay for buildings, and produce what you want in there, right? And write the grants that you want. Those are free, right? And have other people to donate to make the difference. This is why we should have no black community where there are churches and there's no mission. See? But you get these preachers in there that go to whooping you and hollering to you, and you let them do it. They have no concern for the people in the church and no concern for the people without. You have a few that have concern, but the majority of the people that are being called to these religious institutions have no concern for the black community. And that's how we got into the place that we're in. This is how we've gotten there. This is how we gotten there. So God be raising up leaders that are youth. In the past, you had young people who weren't so aggressive. When they saw the people getting killed and they could be killed, they had nothing to lose, then they got aggressive. Now you have more young black carrying weapons. At one time, they carried weapons to protect the black community. But if we don't keep them focused, right, because blacks are still being killed in the black community, now blacks are killing blacks. The white man don't have to do it. But we've got to teach. We've got to teach. Because I don't think that weapons is the answer anyway. I don't think that that's the answer. Maybe individually if somebody comes against you. Because you do have white people just running around killing us at will. I understand that. But beyond all of that, if you get the numbers together, if you unite, You'll have firepower, but that's your right. That's your right to do that under the Second Amendment. But what I'm trying to get you to see, if you come together to rebuild and reshape and re-educate your community, to re-employ your community, you are more powerful than any bullet out of any gun. More powerful than any bullet out of any gun. That's what I want you to know. Now, let's get back to Miss Fleming. Sarah Mae Fleming was born January the 28th, 1933, and she just died in 1993. It's sad that she died without us really knowing the contributions that she made. I mean, as a people, globally, nationally, and otherwise, because we've been carrying the Rosa Parks farce, which was organized not by King, but organized by black boulets in Montgomery, Alabama, that were tied to the house of their masters, who was running Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia, and some of the other stronger southern states, including Virginia, and galvanizing any incident that would happen so that they could carefully move, carefully operate that position, right? The position of control is what I'm talking about. And after a while, you'll see things will die out, right? And then we're moving on. Listen, here's a funny thing. The youth nonviolent coordinating committee, or the young Christian workers of the NAACP, or the youth NAACP forum, had decided amongst themselves what they would do. They decided, because they saw the older leaders as sellouts. If you look today, a lot of older leaders could be considered sellouts. Some of them are burnout. The ones that are not sellouts are just burnout, because they're tired of fighting and our people won't support it. You got so many black people out here now acting like fools. I tell you, it's just me talking. I'd be very careful what position you take, what you utter, and what you would do, because you don't have an organization. When I say organization, I'm talking about the black community today in 2025. And really, you haven't had it since 19. I would probably say you hadn't had a real movement since 1995 through 98. And I say that because Khalid Muhammad was a mover that Miss Coretta Scott King respected, Miss Betty Shabazz respected. A lot of the older civil rights leaders and their families respected him because he had mobilized young people to do something on their own. Now, the unity that he could garner among black people, old and young, was a great threat to America. A great threat. Because Khalid Muhammad was an amazing brother, and there's no telling what he would have done. Even the things he was doing on a smaller scale was eye-opening and ground-shaking. And that's a subject for another day. You know, how he was stopped, who stopped him, or whatnot. But you could kill the revolutionary, but you could never kill the revolution. I believe it was Fred Hampton that said that, and that reigns so true. So in a sense, Claudette Colvin, Sarah Mae Fleming, and all the others, because I think you got about 8 to 15 others that defied the bus segregation system. But they were smothered, because they didn't come from the right black family or didn't have money or weren't upstanding or this and that, whatever it was. They were smothered until those that are controlling the machines, the political machines, could get the people there that they wanted there. Pay them some money, give them some prestige. Come on, brothers and sisters. So they can keep things the way it's always been. Let's go along to get along. We don't want to mess up. We don't want to go too fast. Sounds familiar? But Sarah Mae Fleming, let's get back on her. She was born 1933, June 28, 1933. She passed in 1993, so she was 60 years of age. She passed June the 16th, 1993, and that was, 12 days before her birthday. She was a black woman. I'm going to use the term black. She was American African, not African American. She was American African. And she was expelled from the bus in Columbia, South Carolina. If you ride the buses in Columbia, South Carolina, you'll see a picture of Sarah Mae Fleming Brown. And it'll give a little synopsis of her. She refused to surrender her seat. The NAACP had this information. They had this information, but again, they was working for the House. So when the master come down and said, we can't use A, B, and C, but I tell you what, let's use this person, because I know Sister Parks. She did some work for me. I know her. Let's go along with her. And she seemed upstanding and respectable, and yeah, we're going to go with her. Now, they wouldn't give her a job in Alabama because they told her she had to go. But to my understanding, she received monies and received endorsements, both from the black and white community, for getting out of there and going to Detroit, the same place she sent Claudette Colvin. Come on, brothers and sisters, you can't make this up. So, Sarah Mae Fleming Brown, the original person to defy the bus segregation laws, she was expelled from the bus for 17 months. This happened before Rosa Parks. She refused to surrender her seat, right? She refused to surrender her seat. Fleming's lawsuit against the bus company played an important role later in Parks' case. See? She had already filed the suit. So they couldn't file the suit. They had to get ahead of it. She was a basic sister. Sarah Mae Fleming was, we know she was born June 28, 1933, to another important person in the church. Her mom, to Mac and Rosella Goodwin Fleming. Okay? Mac and Rosella Goodwin Fleming. Now, they were from Eastover, South Carolina. And when Eastover is the people there, this is in Richland County. The Eastover it's where the more conscious and people are there. They're in the country, sort of like suburban. It's very suburban, but this is where the power, the movement, is metropolitan area sort of controlled by the farm industry and blacks that are regular workers, but also have their own side business. They're used to standing up for something and making do. They're used to going for broke, so to speak, right? So her family owned a 188-acre farm. She completed the 10th grade at Weber High School in Eastover before leaving school to work, right? She spent a year working for her uncle in Ohio before returning to South Carolina. She saw certain things in Ohio's black community that moved her. pride. Same thing she saw back home, she saw there, but saw other advances in the North, right? Other advances in the North. The North may have been more advanced, but the problem was still there, right? So they really saw a more sophisticated system of segregation. Because in the North, you got a sophisticated system of segregation. You don't have, in the North, you don't have freedom and equality. It looks like that. But people still don't really own their homes. It's difficult for them to do that, right? They don't have the mind to renovate housing. They have the mind to create their own institutions for vocation and education like they had in the past. Most of those businesses were brought back from the South into the North. Now, so when she was returning to South Carolina, our sister, she moved in with a cousin and began to work in 2 jobs. This is important. One as a domestic worker in Columbia, South Carolina, right? The other one, she ran her own business, a seamstress, right, in pressing. So her civil rights activism, though, took place on June the 22nd, 1954. This is a year before Rosa Parks, 18 months before Rosa Parks. Fleming boarded a bus to go to work. Remember, she's cleaning houses. And then she's a domestic worker cleaning houses. She also has her own thing she's doing. She boarded the bus to go to work. She took the only empty seat, which she believed began in the rows where the black riders were allowed to sit. So this is where they were allowed to sit. She took that seat. The driver challenged her for sitting in white-only section. He said it was because they would take those chains and move them back or move them forward at their will. And because she was so humiliated, right, she signaled to get off at the next stop. The bus driver blocked her attempt to exit through the front of the bus and punched her in the stomach as he ordered her off the rear of the bus. All right? And this is where it begins. Local civil rights activists heard of the ordeal and enlisted the attorney, Philip Wittenberg. This was a white attorney in Columbia. He represented Fleming. Now, there's another brother that you need to become aware of that was instrumental. His name was Finney. He was a lawyer. He was a civil rights lawyer. His name was Finney. Now, he was very powerful in Columbia, South Carolina. Very, very, very powerful in Columbia, South Carolina. But this white lawyer, Philip Wittenberg, is at the head of this case, a white attorney in Columbia, represented Fleming versus South Carolina, Electric and Gas, which owned the bus route, right? It was filed on July the 21st, 1954 in the U.S. District Court. Okay? The allegation was that Fleming's 14th Amendment right had been violated. This was the allegation, which is true. So the allegation that her 14th Amendment right was violated to equal protection, and on February the 16th, 1955, the federal district judge George Bell Timmerman Sr. Okay, we're gonna talk about him later. But he was the United States District Judge of the United States District Court for Eastern District of South Carolina and the United States District Court of Western District of South Carolina. We're going to talk about him later because Supreme Court is going to push his decision back. It's going to go back to him. He's going to deny it again, and then they're going to take it and they're going to overturn it. Now, Judge Timmerman dismissed the case. Ms. Fleming appealed to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. Her case was argued June the 21st, 1955. The Fourth Circuit reversed the Judge Timmerman on July 14, 1955, and remanded the case for further proceeding. Now, what is happening in 55? Montgomery, Alabama is getting together. The NAACP there is trying to get ahead of this. They got King there. They're going to use him. They're going to use King to push this thing. King don't even know anything about this until they bring it to him. Now, when King get involved, he really got involved because of the killing of Emmett Till. This is when he got deeply involved. This busting, they slung it on up in there. So what was moving him, though, was the case of Emmett Till and others like Emmett Till. There was another young man that had gotten killed. Other cases like Emmett Till. And King said something has to be done about this. This was in his sermon. He was a different kind of minister. Like Minister Malcolm, he was talking on current things and saying, listen, we got to do something about this. So, the South Carolina Electric or SCEG appealed the decision of the appeal court on April the 23rd, 1956. The Montgomery bus boycott is still going on because it lasted for 381 days. Now, the United States Supreme Court refused to review the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal decision, and on June 13, 1956, Judge Timmerman dismissed the case once again. Mr. Whittenberg decided not to handle a second appeal and turned the case over to Thurgood Marshall. The person that had a lot to do with that was Majeska Simpkins. You got to look her up. She helped organize the NAACP with W.E. Du Bois. You need to look that up. See, there's a lot that was going on then. There was a bunch of politics, black boule, a bunch of cooning, a bunch of house and shuffling and all of that before anything could really get done. I'm just letting you know what's going on, brothers and sisters. So the case turned over to Thurgood Marshall and Robert Carter of the NAACP. Of the what? The NAACP. For the third trial, Lincoln Jenkins Jr. and Matthew J. Perry represented Miss Fleming. And the jury quickly found in the bus company's favor. But by this time, the Montgomery bus boycott and the decision in Brown versus Board of Education had been rendered, so a third appeal was not filed. But they was getting the momentum from Sarah Fleming's case. Thurgood Marshall was working as a district Supreme Court judge and lawyer at that time. Then later he's made judge, and this is how a lot of stuff has got done. Thurgood Marshall was one of the few people that worked from the ground, but even them bringing him as a Supreme Court judge, the minute that they took him off the ground and put him in the Supreme Court, then we knew then. Now there's no other lawyer. There's no good lawyers in the NAACP because all the rest of them were yes men. Thurgood Marshall wasn't. But the rest of them were yes men. And so Majeska Simpkins said when they lost Thurgood Marshall, the NAACP was really over. Sarah Fleming and all of them do it. When they lost Thurgood Marshall, that was it. That was the end of it. During her legal case, Sarah Mae Fleming married John Brown of Gaston County, North Carolina. The couple had 3 children. Sarah died of a heart attack brought on by diabetes June the 16th, 1993, just before her 60th birthday. She was buried in the Goodwill Baptist Church Cemetery in Eastover, South Carolina. You can go there. As a matter of fact, I would that you go there, and I'm going to be doing a filming. We'll be dedicating a day to Sarah Mae Fleming. We'll be dedicating a day to her here soon. I believe it's coming up in May, doing Malcolm X and other leaders who have to be recognized as national leaders and moral leaders that really made a difference, but got swept under the rug, swept under the carpet. So, but you should go there. It's Goodwill Baptist Church in Eastover, South Carolina. It's not hard to find, and you should go there. But stress has a way of manifesting in our eating and things like that. And the sister was probably just burnt out. At 60 years of age, you having to fight everything you do. When you having to fight for basic stuff, it takes stress. It's just a stress. it takes a toll on you. It's healthier for you to do something for yourself. It's healthier for you to control your income, for you to control the systems that are around you, for you to become involved in the organizations in your own community is mentally and physically healthy, biologically healthy, cardiologically healthy. Brothers and sisters, we're in hell. We're in hell. Racism runs this place. Racism runs this hell that we're in. In 2005, a documentary entitled Before ROSA, The Unsung Contributions of Sarah Mae Fleming, aired on PBS stations across the United States. They had the information. Well, they could have did it, could have really given her recognition back then. But Sarah Mae Fleming was not somebody they could control. She's come from an independent business background as it relates to farming. Everything she got and she worked for. She didn't beg nobody for nothing because she didn't come from that kind of family. She wasn't shuffling and dancing. She didn't come from that. And when you can't control, they don't want to have nothing to do with somebody they can't control. They can't control you. They don't want to have nothing to do with you. They don't want to have nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with you. Peace. Peace. We're acknowledging our brother James Pryor, who says that Neely Fuller Jr. wrote a compensatory counter-racist code book of suggestions for victims of white supremacy. The book was written to assist individuals with the process of solving their problems. Appreciate that, brother. Appreciate that. Our brother Reggie T., he acknowledged, good brother, but respectfully I challenge that Sarah Mae Fleming, PBUH, was not the first. That's true. That's true. There was somebody before her, brother. There was somebody before her. Martha White on June 15, 1953, did it first in Baton Rouge, respectfully. That's true. I agree. Let me put that in there. I agree. I did read that. I agree. My only thing I'm saying is I agree with you, Brother Reggie. The only thing that I'm saying is this. I agree, but she was the first one to voraciously challenge. We could defy the bus, but to be able to challenge the bus system and challenge the government. See, Fleming challenged the bus system and the government. More than the civil rights people, I'm typing this in, so I got a little quiet. More than the civil rights people, or more than the activists, I should put activists before and I should put more than any activist. Is that right? More than any activist before or after her. So she challenged the bus system and the government more than any activist before and after her. But she was noted in history. But yes, I agree. However, I do agree, and I want to make that plain. with Brother Reggie. The very first is recognized as Martha White. That is true. So we see that there were many, and I want to make sure I put that in there because that's very important. We come here for knowledge, and believe you me, if there's something that you see that I don't see, bring it to my attention. And both points, we could bring both points. And we know one thing for sure, that it wasn't Rosa Parks. We know that it was not Rosa Parks. She was not the first. And so we have to understand the reason why they brought her was to keep things moving in their favor. They had to keep things moving. So we've got work to do, brothers and sisters. We got work to do. We got to get on it. We got to research. We got to study. But the main thing is we got to be building our own community. And we can't do it with lies. We got to uncover the truth, and then we got to build it, because there's no big I's or little U's in team. But it brings us all together. And as one team, as one man, when I say man, I mean woman too. As one people, we'll come together and do the work that needs to be done to build up our community. Brothers and sisters, I appreciate you very much. Thank you for hearing what I have to say. And to those that will listen to this, get the knowledge, get righteous, get salvation, and get on God's side. Get on God's side. And if you get on God's side, then God will be on our side. And remember, brothers and sisters, where there are two or three gathered in his name, there he is in the midst, and in the midst, and in the unity, there is true strength. If I didn't say to you in the beginning, I say to you now, Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be unto you. Peace be unto you.